Hey there, sewing enthusiasts. This tutorial is on crop top and bell sleeves. I'll be showing the measurements you need for this on the screen, and these are my drawing tools. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I'll be doing is to come down from the top of my pattern paper by 1 inch, and this is because I'll be adding a stitching allowance to my shoulder. I'll be adding about ½ inch stitching allowance to my shoulder, so mark that on both sides of your paper and rule a straight line across just like I'm doing. Now the next thing you'll be doing is to place your vertical measurement from your shoulder to your bust point. You place that. Mine is 12 inches. I'll go ahead and mark that, and next is your shoulder to your top length. This is a crop top, so you're going to decide the length of the crop top you want to use. I'll be using a top length of 21 inches, which I might go ahead and trim out if it's too long, and I'm going to mark that on the other side of my pattern paper, and then I'll be running a straight line across. Now the next vertical measurement you'll be taking is your chest line. You can come up from your bust point by 2 inches or divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5. Mine is 8.5 inches, so I'm just going to mark that on both sides of my pattern paper and then connect it with a rule. I just went ahead to extend my lines to the end of the pattern paper, and I'm going to be labeling each line. This is the shoulder line, and this is the chest line. I have the bust point, and the last one is my top length. The next thing you'll be doing is to place your round body measurements. My shoulder divided by 2 is 8.5, so I'll just mark that there, and I also mark the same 8.5 on my chest line to get a straight line for my armhole. Then I'll connect from the shoulder to the chest with a straight line. Now to get your shoulder slant, on the shoulder line mark 3 inches, and then on the armhole line you are going to come down by 1 inch, and you are going to connect this 1 inch to the 3 inches you marked with a straight line. Done with the shoulder slant, the next thing you'll be doing is to mark your neckline. This is a high neckline, so I'm going to come down from my shoulder line by 3 inches, and on the shoulder on the other side I'm going to mark 3.5 inches instead of 3 inches because I don't want it to be too tight on my neck, and I'm going to connect that with a curve. Now I just wanted to mention that this particular pattern we are drafting, we are using this pattern paper to draft both the front and back, and this is because the front and the back are exactly the same. The only difference is in the neckline and in the armhole curve. Now let's come to the armhole. Place your tape on the 1 inch slant down to the chest line and divide it by 2. You can also do that by folding your tape into 2 and marking the midpoint. Coming to the chest line, divide your bust measurement by 4 and add about 1.5 inch. This is because there is no zipper for this crop top and you are going to need ease to be able to wear it. So divide your bust by 4, add 1.5 to it, mark it, and then mark your stitching allowance. Done with that, you'll be connecting the bust measurement on your chest line to the midpoint you marked on your armhole line, then into the 1 inch slant you came down by, and you'll be connecting this with a curve just like you see me doing. This curve is going to be your back armhole curve because remember we are drafting both the front and the back pattern. To get the front armhole curve, come in from the midpoint by ½ inch, and just like I did for the front, I'm going to connect that with a curve from the chest line to my 0.5 inch on the midpoint to my 1 inch slant. Now we have our front armhole curve and our back armhole curve. I'm just going to label that with the initials front and back. Then just extend your curve into your stitching allowance like so. The next thing I'll be doing is to mark my round bust measurement on my bust point line, divide it by 4 and add 1.5 like you did on the chest line, and then your stitching allowance. This is totally skippable because we marked the same thing on our chest line. On your top length, you'll be marking the same bust measurement divided by 4, but instead of adding 1.5 inch, I'm only adding 1 inch. This is because I want to give a little fitting at my top length. So I'm going to divide my bust measurement by 4, add 1 inch and mark it, and add a 0.5 inch stitching allowance. You can also add your 1 inch stitching allowance or whatever stitching allowance you used, but I just wanted to use 0.5. This makes no difference, it's still the same thing. Go ahead and connect your lines and also connect your stitching allowance. The next thing I'll be doing is to mark my neckline for my back piece. I'll be coming down from my shoulder line by 2.5 inches. I'm going to mark that and I'm going to connect it into the 3.5 inches with a curve. Now we are done with this pattern, which is for the front and the back. Just go ahead and cut this out. Don't forget to add your 0.5-inch stitching allowance to the shoulder slant. Mark it on both sides, connect with a straight line. I'll just go ahead to finish cutting out my pattern. Now I have this beautiful crepe material which is almost not stretchy, and this is what I'll be using. Now place your pattern on your fabric. I already went ahead to cut out my fabric at the exact measurement of my pattern paper because I already added my stitching allowance to my pattern paper. I won't be adding stitching allowance to any parts of this. So measure the biggest part of your pattern paper, add about 1 inch so you don't run short on material, multiply it by 2, then cut your material and put it on fold. That was how I did mine. So now I'll just go ahead and cut out. So I'll be cutting out the back piece first, and remember we have our back neckline, so go ahead and cut out along your back neckline and also along your back armhole curve. Then go ahead and trim out or cut out the side and your back piece is ready. I'll just be using my chalk to mark on the wrong side because this fabric is quite similar both the front and back. We are done with the back, and now let's cut out the front. For the front piece, just go ahead and cut it out just like you did for the back piece. The only difference is the front neckline, you're going to cut around the front neckline and the front armhole line. Cut out the sides, and now we have our front piece ready. I'll also be marking on the wrong sides of my front piece just so I don't get it mixed up. Now I have my front piece and my back piece ready. The next thing I'll be doing is to pop my neckline using this bias, and I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to be placing this bias on the right side of my fabric. This is what it looks like. So I'm just going to place it on my neckline from the top point there. I'll pin it down, and I'm going to stitch it down all the way inside this first folded part of my bias. As you can see, I'll just stitch it down all the way through my neckline, and I'm going to do this for the front part and for the back part. I've done the first stitching for my bias on both the front and the back piece, and I'm going to be showing you guys what it looks like and what I was trying to explain. See where I stitched it down, the first folding, I stitch it down through the first folding all the way through my neckline. Now I'm going to fold the second folding and take it to the back like you see me doing. So now I'm going to stitch that down all the way through the back, and it's going to hide the bias like this. Now I'm done piping my neckline for the front and the back piece, and this is what it looks like. This is how beautiful yours should come out. This is very easy to do. And if you want to do it the other way to make the bias to show in front, just put the bias on the wrong side of the fabric and take it back into the right side. That way the bias will be visible. Now I'm placing my front and my back piece right sides facing each other, and I'll go to my machine and stitch down the shoulders. After stitching down the shoulders, this is what it looks like. I'll just open that up to show you guys. This is the front side. Done that, the next thing you'll be doing is to take the measurement of your armhole. So I'm just going to take my armhole measurement from the top of my shoulder through the curve of my armhole. This is what I'll be using to cut out the sleeve. So what I have here is 12 inches. For the sleeve, I've gone ahead to cut out my sleeve and I've put it on fold. For the length of my sleeve, the length of my sleeve is 23 inches, and here I have about 46 inches. So because this is long enough, I'm just going to fold it into two. If your fabric is not long enough, you can cut it differently and put them together to cut it. So because this is a bell sleeve, the hem is supposed to be very long. I have 13 inches on fold, which means I have 26 inches in total, and my length is 23 inches. I'll just arrange that properly, and then let's draft out our sleeve. From the top of the sleeve, I'll be coming down by 4.5 inch, just like you see me doing. Mark 4.5 inch. If it's for a bigger person or someone who has more body, you can make it 5 inches. So I'll mark that on both sides, and I'm going to connect it with a straight line. This is going to be my bicep line. I'll just mark the 12 inches I got from my armhole as a guide first. Then from the top of my sleeve, I'm also going to mark 4.5 inches at my sleeve cap. Like I said, if it's for a bigger person, you can use 5 inches. And then coming in from that 4.5 inches, I'm going to put my tape on that point down to my bicep line, divide it by 2 using my tape rule like that, and mark the midpoint. The next thing I'm going to do is to connect a curve from the midpoint I got to the cap of the sleeve, just like you see me doing. And also from the midpoint towards the bicep line in a curve like that. Now we have our curve, and the next thing I'm going to do is to measure this curve and be sure that it is up to the 12 inches I have on my armhole. So I have my 12 inches there, so I'm just going to mark it like that. The next thing to do is to extend the line from the 12 inches on our bicep towards the end of the hem, just like you see me doing. So just draw a line and extend it to the hem. You can go ahead and cut it here, but if you want it to have that V-shaped structured bell effect, come up from this point by 1.5 inches and connect it into the hem of the line like you see me doing. At this point now, I'll go ahead and cut my sleeve along my blue lines. Just go ahead and cut your sleeve out. Then notch the midpoint of your sleeves. The next thing is to connect your sleeve to the armhole of your top. So from this midpoint I notched on the sleeve, I'm going to place it right sides facing each other to the top, and I'll place the midpoint of the sleeve to the midpoint of my armhole there. Now I'll go to my machine and stitch this down. I'm done stitching down the sleeve, and this is how nice it's looking. So coming to this place that connects the armhole to the top, the armhole is quite longer, so I'm just going to trim that out. I'm done trimming out the excess, and this is what I have. The next thing I will be doing is to use bias and pipe the hem of my sleeves. I'm done piping the hem of my sleeves, and this is what it looks like. Now, as you can see, I took note of that curve there, so when putting your bias, make sure that you take note of the curve and follow the curve while sewing it. I'll go ahead and stitch down the sides by 1 inch. After stitching down the sides, this is what I have, guys. This is how beautiful this is looking. I'll just go ahead and try it on.